You hear all the buzzwords, right? Big data, AI, machine learning. But let's cut through the noise for a second. Today, we're talking about what really turns all that data into something valuable for a business. And spoiler alert, it's not about knowing the most complicated algorithm. It's about a whole new way of thinking. So, let's get into it.
And that's the word right there that just jumps out. Mandate. Using data to make decisions, that's not a nice-to-have anymore. It's not a trend. It's pretty much a requirement to even stay in the game, no matter what industry you're in.
So that brings us to the real question, doesn't it? I mean, pretty much everyone has access to data now, but not everyone is getting that killer competitive edge from it. So what gives? It's because just having the data is step zero. You need a specific mindset, a framework for thinking, to really unlock what's inside.
And that mindset is what we call data-analytic thinking. Now, don't worry, this isn't about you suddenly needing to become a PhD in statistics. Not at all. It's about learning to see your business challenges through a new lens, the lens of what data can do to solve them. Think of it as a strategic framework, not just a bunch of technical skills. And when you start thinking this way, you naturally start practicing what's called data-driven decision-making, or DDD. All this really means is that you shift from making calls based only on your gut feeling or how we've always done it, to making choices that are actually backed up by hard evidence.
To really see how powerful this shift can be, we've got to look at one of the classic stories. This is a company that didn't just use data, they built their entire empire on it. I'm talking about the Capital One story. It's a fantastic example.
Okay, so picture the credit card industry back in the 80s and early 90s. It was kind of boring. You got a credit card, I got a credit card, and we probably got the exact same interest rate. It was a one-size-fits-all model. But this little regional bank, Signet Bank, saw things differently. They saw a huge opportunity.
And look how fast this happened. Instead of just asking, will this person pay us back, they started asking a much smarter question. How profitable will this person be? They used data to build predictive models and started offering thousands of different customized products. And it worked. Oh boy, did it work. Their credit card division just exploded with profitability, so much so that they spun it off into a whole new company. You've probably heard of it, Capital One.
And get this wasn't some side hustle for them. By the year 2000, Capital One was running 45,000 different scientific tests a year. Think about that. They were constantly tweaking, testing, and learning from their data at an incredible scale. This was the absolute core of their business.
And here's the big takeaway from their story. Capital One figured out that data isn't just the leftover stuff that your business produces, what some people call operational exhaust. No, data is a strategic asset. It's something you have to invest in and build your entire strategy around, just like you would with money or buildings.
Okay, so you're on board. Data is an asset. Awesome. Now what? Well, the next piece of data analytic thinking is learning how to translate your fuzzy, real-world business problems into sharp, specific questions that data can actually answer.
And a lot of those questions fall into two big buckets. The first one is called classification. That's when you're trying to predict a category. Will this customer churn? Yes or no? Is this email spam or not spam? The other one is regression, and that's when you're trying to predict an actual number. How much will this customer spend? Or what's the temperature going to be tomorrow?
And of course, there are others. You've got clustering, which is great for finding natural groups in your customers that you didn't even know existed. Or co-occurrence grouping. You probably know it as market basket analysis. It's that classic thing of finding out what products people tend to buy together. Each one of these techniques is a tool for turning a business question into a solvable puzzle.
All right, but as we get these powerful new tools, we run into some really sneaky new traps. And maybe the biggest, most important one to understand in all of data science is something I like to call the overfitting trap. It's a cautionary tale about the dangers of chasing perfection.
So, let me paint you a picture. Imagine your data science team comes to you, and they're ecstatic. They say, we built a new model to predict which customers will leave, and we tested it on all our data from the last 5 years. It's 100% accurate. I mean, that sounds incredible, right? Maybe a little too incredible.
So you dig in, and sure enough, it's true. For every single past customer in your database, the model perfectly predicts whether they stayed or left. Not a single mistake. The question is, how is that even possible?
And here is the gotcha. The model hadn't actually learned the general reasons why customers churned. It had basically just memorized the names of every customer who had churned in the past. So of course it was perfect on old data, but it's completely useless for predicting what a new customer, someone it's never seen before, is going to do.
This classic mistake has a name. It's called overfitting. It's what happens when your model gets so customized to the exact data you trained it on that it starts picking up on the random noise instead of the real underlying pattern. It's a model that has memorized the past instead of learning how to predict the future. And avoiding this is a huge part of data analytic thinking.
So, if getting a perfect score on your old data can actually be a bad thing, how in the world do you know if your model is any good? How do you give it a proper reality check? Well, this brings us to our last big idea: evaluation.
The very first thing you have to do is establish a baseline. A baseline model is just a really simple, common-sense benchmark. Before you get all excited about your fancy new model, you have to ask a simple question. Is it actually better than a super simple guess? If it can't beat that, it's not really adding any value.
There's a perfect analogy for this from weather forecasting. Any new, complex weather prediction model has to prove it's better than two dead simple baselines. The first is called persistence. That's just guessing tomorrow will be the same as today. The second is climatology, guessing tomorrow will be the average weather for that day in history. If your multi-million-dollar model can't beat those simple rules, what's the point?
And at the end of the day, that's what it all comes down to. You can always find some kind of pattern if you stare at data long enough. The real trick, the art of data analytic thinking, is finding the patterns that are actually real and meaningful, the ones that hold up when you really examine them closely.
So, let's put it all together. This is the Data Analytic Thinker's Toolkit. You treat data like a core strategic asset. You know how to turn messy business problems into clean data tasks. You are always on the lookout for that overfitting trap. You check every new model against a simple baseline. And above all, you focus on asking the right questions.
So that leaves us with one last question, a question for you to take with you. When you think about your work, your company, your industry, what hidden asset is just sitting there in your data, waiting for the right kind of thinking to come along and unlock its value?